Tired of your current job? You want to start your own business? Well, you're in luck. Jamie Lee is hosting So You Want to Start a Business, where every Saturday he interviews actual business owners and they'll share their journeys. They'll give you valuable tips and strategies on how to start and grow your own business. Let's see who Jamie has in store for us today on So You Want to Start a Business.
Today's special guest is Kasey Anton. Kasey is the founder of Spark Business and Consulting. She's the author of the new book, Profit First for Restaurants. Kasey has been in the restaurant industry for over 20 years and has spoken at conferences nationwide as well as podcasts spanning vast landscape of business and entrepreneurship. Having serviced hundreds of clients and growing her own consulting business of 12 plus employees, Kasey is highly successful in her own business and has helped her clients become more successful than they could have ever imagined. Just check out Spark's glowing reviews. Plus, today, click the description below in the link for the link to download Kasey's 10 ways to make your restaurant more profitable. With that, let's have a great big welcome to the show for Kasey Anton. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have a great guest with us today. Kasey, glad to have you on here. Just in general, just so that everybody knows that you are qualified to answer the fabulous questions that I have, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your business, and about your upcoming book, The Profit First for Restaurants.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Jamie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll jump right in. So let's see. I am a former restaurateur, Boston restaurateur, turned bookkeeper, turned consultant, and then now a recent author, which I never saw coming, but I'll get to that in a minute. So in terms of the business world, I think that kind of consumes all walks of life. So restaurants are not for the faint of heart, right? I think there's an old saying, or maybe I made it up, I doubt it, but there's an old saying, like, if you can run a restaurant, you can run any business. I find this to be 100% true. I think we're going to get into some of the details of that throughout the interview, and some of the great questions that you forwarded to me. We'll dive into what that is. But yeah, restaurants just have lots of moving parts, living, breathing. It doesn't ever shut down. Very different from an office job or other types of jobs, which you have a weekend coming, or 5 o'clock, everybody goes home, or whatever it is. In restaurants, you really don't have that. It's a constant, even if the restaurant is only open at night, let's say, you still have a full staff in there during the day doing their job. So it's a big thing. But when I decided to have children, got married, I didn't think I could commit that type of time, energy, commitment to the restaurant industry anymore. Plus, I had been in it for about 25 years. So it was kind of, most people feel a little bit of burnout. I thought, okay, I sold my last restaurant in Boston at the same time I was about to have my first child. I'm like, this is a great time to turn the chapter, right? So I did that, and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Because all I've done, I mean, other than going to college, I had a bachelor's degree. All I had done was worked in restaurants. That was my love. It was the only thing I wanted. I worked in every single position, from dishwasher, valet, right up to general manager, and then eventually owner. And I thought, okay, well, I could probably help other businesses with their finances, because I learned a lot about money in the restaurant business, right? Like, a lot. And I have this unique perspective. Probably a lot of restaurateurs may have this or not, but we went from the best of times. Literally, we were making money hand over fist for a couple of years, like living like rock stars, to the absolute worst of times, which started right after September 11th, and then other things happening in the world, and certainly in and around Boston at the time, where by the time I was getting ready to sell, I was stretching every single dollar as far as it could possibly go so that we didn't have to shut the doors. And thank God we didn't. I ended up selling and getting out and paying off everybody I owed, and walking away with a little bit, and that was great. Honestly, had we had to operate even a few months to a year longer, that probably would not have been the closing chapter on that. So anyway, I figured, all right, well, I learned a lot about money and about cash flow, so let me see if I can do this for some other people. And I had I had an old chef of mine starting up his restaurant. He's like, hey, he was a great cook, but he knew nothing about running a business. So I went in and I helped him out a little bit. Then he had an interior designer as a girlfriend, and she was terrible at money. And she, hey, can you help her out? I'm like, oh, I don't know about that, but let me go in. Oh, so come to find out, 2 + 2 = 4, no matter wherever you go. So I helped her, and from there she referred me, and it just ended up going like that. So from that, I started Spark Business Consulting. That's the main company that I own now, where we help all kinds of businesses. The restaurants are the easiest ones now, right? Because any other business, whether it's construction, it's law firms, it's salons, it's spas, it's professional services, those seem so easy to me because it's just less moving parts, less going on, less perishable, less everything. But I was able to do that. And now with Spark, we have about almost 250 clients. I have staff of 13 full-time employees, and that's what we do. We do the bookkeeping, the accounting, and then we consult so the businesses really understand their business model. And
that's the important part, yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes with money, it's kind of one of those things they really want to know what you're going to do with their money and suggest that. Yeah. So with starting a new business, it's always a daunting task, and that's primarily why I started the channel, or one of them, And so many businesses are hard to get to that 5-year mark. Restaurants seem to be even harder for that. Why is it so much more difficult for restaurants to really gain that ground and that become a brand to where they can get those customers in and make it to that 5-year mark?
That is such a great question. I wish I would get that so much more often. I devoted an entire chapter in my book, even though my book is Profit First for restaurants. It definitely will lend itself to almost every other business type out there. And this one chapter about business modeling, that's what your question is about. So for any business, you have to understand what your business model is. And I feel like why so many businesses fail, especially early on, is because there's more of a mentality of, if I build it, they will come. And I don't think that is present. Like, I don't think people realize that's what they're thinking or feeling or doing, but it is what I see in and out all the time. So I've owned this consulting company for 15, I think it's our 15th or 16th year now. So I've been in this front row seat to startups, to businesses that have been in business for 20 years, everything in between. And that is very much a common denominator, is that it's kind of like, all right, well, I'm really good at this thing, and I'm going to go and I'm going to sell it, and maybe I'll hire some staff or whatnot, and let's just see how the numbers shake out. And that is not a business model. It is not. Luck is not a business model is a great quote. I forgot who said that, actually. But it is a great quote. That's the thing. Businesses don't go in with really understanding, okay, if only 10 people come in and pay me this, what does that look like on paper? Yeah. Can I pay myself? Is there a profit? Can I pay my staff, my expenses, whatever? Okay, what if 20 people come? What if no people come in? Like, you have to know that inside and out and have contingencies for all of it.
And I can see that, especially with me starting out just on an online business, where I don't have the brick and mortar stuff. You have so many types of material and stuff like that. Oh, I want to buy this. Oh, if I only just buy this service, then it'll run itself and stuff like that. To where, with restaurants, it's even more on that. And into that, restaurants has always been, seems like a number game, as a frequent watcher of Kitchen Nightmares or some of those, they always talk about the percentages of expenses and stuff like that. They should have so much percentage of their expenses for food, for the front room, stuff like that. One, does that kind of go, let me say, is it different for restaurant to restaurant, or is it a general thing? And kind of give me an idea of what those numbers might need to be for a restaurant.
So in general, there is a general kind of formula for restaurants across the board. It might even be outdated, but it's still the formula that we have, which is 30% for food and beverage costs, 30% for payroll, and then, so that leaves you a 40% gross profit margin, right? Okay. So if you get $100, right, and $30 is going toward your food and beverage vendors, and $30 is going toward your payroll, it leaves you with $40, right? So the $40 is spread out among all your other expenses, and that would be occupancy would probably be the next highest. And then there's going to be dining room supplies and advertisement and like that. And here's the thing. Other than the 30-30, which could change, I actually, again, like back to just mentioning the business modeling chapter I have, it talks about like, hey, do some restaurants run at a 25% food and bev and a 35% payroll? Sure they do. And do some run at, a 38% food cost and maybe a 22%? They do, right? So it comes back to your business model. Like if you can get away with a 40% food cost, but your payroll's only 20% or even less, or your occupancy is really low because you got a great deal or you own the building or whatever it is, like as long as those numbers can work out based on what you're projecting and what you really know your expenses are, you can make it work. That just comes back to modeling. And I think when it comes to that in the beginning of a business, and especially of a restaurant, I think there's a lot of blinders on, because honestly, there's a lot of excitement when you're opening up a new business, but especially a restaurant, because you're about to throw a party, right? We're about to throw a party. There's a lot of excitement, and you kind of don't want to look at, hey, what do the utilities really look like? Because those can be huge. What is your lease agreement really say about what you're going to owe for your water bill, for your real estate taxes, for your umbrella policies? Like you have to really know those numbers and put them into a model where it shows you like, okay, what is my break-in? How many people do really need to come in, and what do I need to sell them? And what does my food cost have to be at? Because if you think you're running at a 30% food cost, which is like kind of the average for the industry, about 30%, and it comes back that you're running at 34%, that's 4% is actually a huge amount of money. If restaurants are lucky if they're at a 10% bottom line, lucky if they're at that. So that's not a lot of wiggle room to be over on your prime costs. And your prime costs are your food and beverage costs and your direct labor. Those are your prime costs. And you don't have a lot of wiggle room to be over if that's not what your model is. So it all comes back to having a set of projections where your model shows you your break even. And the reason I come back to break even is because that's what you have the stomach for. Like that, to me, it's like, all right, do you have the stomach to if you can't hit your break even, you're going to lose money.
Right.
And it's not like, oh, bad report card. It's no, you got to fund that loss. And that's going to be in the form of debt of some kind. And what's your stomach for debt? What's that look like? So it all comes back to that. Yeah.
Do you kind of think that, or because I see a lot of restaurants, you see my size, I kind of frequent restaurants a lot. One of the things that I kind of see is that you first go into a restaurant and you get that experience from their food and stuff, and their food is amazing. But then do you think that the restaurant owners start to spend too much, their percentages are off on other things to where then they suddenly have to cut back on the quality of their food to kind of compensate for that, and then that is partially what causes the downfall on other things?
Oh, definitely. If that's the case, if that's what they're doing, definitely. I don't often see that, to be honest with you. I don't often see, I feel like, I work with all different types of restaurants, but especially I'm just thinking of more of like the chef-driven type ones. Like they're so proud of the food that I don't think that would be the first place they would go to cut costs. But if it is, that's the most visible place, and it absolutely would correlate to a downfall in sales, and reputation, and everything spirals down. Yeah,
because especially like the ones that I've seen, the small mom and pop and stuff like that, the rural restaurants, you go the first time and then you go the next time, and it's good for a while, but then you might see not as many people are coming in. It's because, okay, the food isn't as great this time. Oh, yeah. They changed that sauce. Oh, they changed that, the meat that they use for their burgers or something like that. The patty's different or something like that. And that's just an observation of mine, it seems like that. And that's why I was curious whether it is because they're not keeping those numbers on the other things and their projections at that point to where they're doing as much cost savings as they can. And then that's what ends up finally shutting the doors because people don't really like the product.
Yeah, that could definitely be something that could happen. I think what I see in my experience is the portion size will change in order to save costs, but the plate size won't change. And to me, because that visual is so grand in my mind, right? If I'm used to going to a place and I know that their plate size is, what I'm going to get is going to pretty much fill up the plate, and I'm going to look like I'm getting value for what I'm paying or whatnot. And then I come back the next time and like half the plate's white and empty, and I've just got like that. To me, that visual just stays with me, and I'm thinking, oh God, they're cutting costs. But the other part of me always thinks like, oh, there's a different someone else is in the kitchen. And consistency, and you'll hear that a lot in the restaurant industry, is consistency is so important.
And that's pretty much the reason that a lot of people say that franchises are bigger or something like that, because, or I guess the way that they sell it, I guess at that point, is because, okay, you go into a McDonald's, you're used to know what it's going to taste like. Compared to going into a new restaurant or something like that, you're running the risk of somebody else making it or something like that, and kind of being that experience being different each time.
So that's a great point, Jamie, because franchises especially have the perfect formula to succeed, because they have the model, which is how to create the consistency, which is what customers want, the guests want. And then on the other end, their portion sizing, or they have a system for making sure that the portion is always the same, and that portion is going to be controlled in their business model, so they always will have the same food cost. So that's not going to that's just going to be rinse and repeat all day long, and they know they're going to make money. If they're not making money, it's going to be so glaringly obvious to a franchise owner that they'll be able to pick that up right away and make the appropriate corrections. A small business, a one-man operator type thing, without having these tools or someone looking over the shoulder that knows what they're looking at in terms of numbers or whatnot, might not realize that.
So whenever I look at a restaurant, and like I said, I'm a country boy, and I start to look at these restaurants, and I've said it on my interviews before, I was a big believer in reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And one of the things that he always talked about in that was that it's kind of hard sometimes whenever you think that you're good at something, so you can automatically create a business doing it. But then you don't understand the actual running of the business, to where you're not running your business, you're just becoming your own employee. Do you see that sometimes, especially for a smaller restaurant, or as a restaurant starts, that sometimes it can be that way? If somebody thinks, man, I'm a great chef, everybody compliments me on my food, so I can automatically sell that. But then if you don't know the numbers behind it, then you're doomed to fail.
Oh, yeah. I see this all the time. That saying goes, the last thing you need to know how to do to open a restaurant is cook. It's 100% true. It's 100% true. And, the first lines of my book are, there's a running joke in my office, is that whenever someone comes in to tell me about their startup restaurant, my first joke to my staff is, how soon do you think I can talk them out of this? And that's what I find myself doing all the time. And it's kind of a sad thing to even have to say, but I know that I'm doing them a favor, because they'll come in here and they'll be like, oh my God, I make the best chocolate chip cookie in the world. And I love businesses that are very singular about what they do, like the Crumbles and like the cupcake places. Like I feel like I saw those come before they even opened. Like that makes sense to me. That model makes sense to me to do that. But when someone comes here and like, oh, I make a really great whatever it is, but there's nothing to back that up. There's no systems. There's no projections. There's no like there's nothing to back it up. I might be like, okay, this could work, but do you know you'll have to sell about 25,000 pickles a week just to make a payroll for yourself and no other employee, or $400? Like,
right.
And like that, they're like, and I get that, like deer in headlights look like, what? And I was like, well, I'm just doing the math right here. You told me this and this and this. This is how many you'll have to sell. Like, do you think you can sell that many? Just because, Aunt Jane and Uncle Peter thought they were great. I mean, are they going to buy 25,000 every single week from you? And that, because I find that a lot. Like, oh, everyone says I make the best, whatever. That's great. But know what you're getting into if you think there's a business in it.
And that's one of those things that people talk about in general money lessons, of realizing what you're spending whenever you equate it to how long you work for that money or something like that. You're actually, you really want that? You work 5 hours for that or something like that. Is your 5 hours worth that much for that item or something like that?
Yeah, they need to understand the runway it might take to get them to where they might be close to a salary they might be making at a job that they have, or a job that they could easily go get that they would like as well. Like there's, there's a difference between a hobby and a business, and they just need to see that runway. So they don't see it.
When you start a business, and I think this is in general, like my son, for instance, it's one of those things, if he wants to start a lawn care business. One of my questions whenever I always wanted to do something like that is I'm going to price myself wrong. So in restaurants, what do you suggest as far as the considerations and stuff of how much they actually price their food, their plates at that point, to where they're successful and make that margin, but not then outprice themselves to their customers?
Yeah, Jamie, that all comes back right to the business model. So one, that would start with their concept, right? So, I mean, chances are you're not going to open a steakhouse and charge $10 a steak. That's impossible. You'll never make money, right? So it comes back to like their business model. Like Chipotle has a great one if they can stay consistent. I mean, that was a genius model because, I mean, their food cost, if done right, could probably be 10 or 12%. I mean, literally, like they're chopping up maybe 3 ounces of chicken, some rice, and now they're charging $20 for that. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm in love with it. I'm in love with the whole idea of that model. I just think that they've, well, where I live here in the South Shore of Boston, and there's 3 Chipotles like within 10 miles. They have been very inconsistent, but that's another topic. So it comes back to what the business model is, and knowing like who your customer is, who lives around you. Who's going to buy from you? What's missing in that market? Okay, what can you be good at? What can you sell? All right, what's the highest you could possibly sell for that to get them in? Or the other concept is there's no cheap offering, and some people just want to be able to go buy something for under $10 for dinner for themselves. Right. Okay, well then what can you charge $10 for, but have it only cost you $2 or $3 maybe to make? And that's the challenge right there. And the creativity in it, honestly, it's not necessarily a challenge. It's I love, that's the creative part of it. But you just have to even know that formula exists.
On to the next one. With the pandemic, so many restaurants end up feeling the crunch of having to adapt because, their doors were shut. Nobody could come in and stuff like that. To where I've seen so many restaurants that are just sit-down restaurants suddenly build a drive-through window, or so many have gone to curbside service and stuff like that. How much do you believe that adaptability and stuff like that, and that type of understanding and quick thinking of business owner of those restaurants kept a lot of those in business at that point?
Oh, 1,000%. And I saw it live, in person, front row seat in action happen to that point. We had, when the pandemic happened in March of 2020, I want to say that, I was in shock for, a few minutes, but then I remember coming in going, all right, let's pull up all of our clients. Who needs our help? Let's get to the restaurants right away. The ones that were shut down immediately, got in contact with every one of them to let them know first, we're here to support you in every way. And so we were definitely engaged with them at the time. And, as an example, one of my restaurants, a casual, single owner restaurant, couldn't see the forest through the trees or whatever. He just couldn't see the takeout. And I said, no, there's going to be a take. People are not going to want to be sitting in their homes cooking nonstop. Not to mention at the time, there wasn't a lot in Stop and Shop shelves, our grocery store. So no, and he couldn't see it, and he just shut the doors before anything was available to him. Whereas I have another casual restaurant, maybe mildly more upscale, but very similar, who just embraced okay, all right, what's going on? What can we do? What do our customers need? And just started this, immediately contacting their customers with, okay, we can make these family meals or individual meals, and here's, the time frame of when you can pick them up. I mean, they designed it any way they wanted because people just, first of all, really wanted to help restaurants. And secondly, they wanted the convenience of not having to cook every single night, because by this point, they already been doing that for a while because no one knew what was going on. And I'm telling you, oh my God, some of my restaurants that adapted and embraced this made more money in those months of being closed than they had ever been open. It was, and I'm talking about lines and lines of cars going down the street, lined up, not only waiting to pay for this pretty pricey food, but also the tipping they were doing because they felt so bad for the staff. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. And to this day, now they're reopened, so the numbers aren't quite the same, but they developed a reputation for doing takeout well. They perfected it over time. So now they not only have that takeout revenue stream, they also have now the in-person revenue stream, and it's skyrocketed. It's amazing what that did.
Hey everyone, sorry to take you a minute away from the interview, but I wanted to take a minute to let you know that funding is available for your business if you need it. I like to go around around towns and see what businesses are out there. Sometimes stop in, see what they need. And we don't want you to end up being a business like this one. This business has had the sign up that it's watched this spot for over 6 months now. Whether that's because of funding or landlord issues or something like that, I don't know that. But just to let you know that funding is available if you do need it, so that we can get you that capital that you need to get your business up and running and get you profitable. Check out businesslifelines.com/funding, or send me an email at info@businesslifelineservices.com, and we'll get you going and make sure that we get you that capital that you need and get you making some money. Now back to the interview. Do you, like some of the restaurants and stuff, especially in a rural, you see a lot of them in a strip mall or something like that now, to where they don't have a curbside service, I guess. Do you think that that's really a big advent of where DoorDash came in? And is that something that, to have that ability to introduce your product to somebody that wouldn't necessarily find you, or want to pick up the kids and stuff and bring them into your restaurant without really knowing what your food is like and stuff like that? Do you think that that's a big thing? That, because I know of one particularly in my neighborhood that does that. They like, oh, that's on DoorDash? Absolutely. And especially like with me working from home, and I'm like, man, I am in the mood for biscuits and gravy. Yeah. I'm not going to go over there and make biscuits and gravy. DoorDash, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that that is something that, now I don't know a lot of things about it, to where how much of a profit cut they take or the cost of it on the DoorDash side of it. But do you think that that's something that, even if it costs a little bit more on those deliveries, that it's something that is advantageous for restaurant owners to think of to draw those customers into their restaurant?
It depends. I mean, if it costs a little bit more, 100%. When it costs 40% more, no. You're going to lose money on doing that. So, I mean, overall, I use DoorDash. I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't use DoorDash. It is amazing. And there are restaurants who obviously don't have the type of infrastructure to create a delivery system for themselves. And DoorDash did that. Now you just got to pay to play. I mean, yeah, it's a no-brainer, and it's an amazing thing to do, except for a while, at the time, it was extraordinarily expensive to be able to do that. But I think during that time, restaurants were so desperate just to be able to sell something, to keep people employed, to cook something, that they kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'll do it. But it was, I wouldn't say catastrophic, but it could have been, considering DoorDash was like, sure, I'll do that for you, but I'm taking half your money.
DoorDash is the business that boomed the most, I think, during the pandemic.
You know,
with groceries and everything now from that.
And it's, I want to say, like, you know, I'm not, I don't know DoorDash inside and out, and I'm not all that familiar with it. I know they have changed. I know, first of all, as a restaurateur, you can make your own deal with DoorDash, kind of like it's not a one size fits all. And I do know over time there is a way to do it where DoorDash will just charge more than you would normally charge, and they make their money that way, because if you're sitting at home and you want to pay $38 for a hamburger that normally costs you $10, like that's up to the owner to do that, because you're paying for the convenience. And I'm all about it. I'm like, great, I'll pay that if I really don't want to go out tonight. So as long as I think it stays in that realm where DoorDash can make their money off of the end user, the guest, right, and not the restaurant, or certainly not as much as they were for a while, then it's a win-win. It just has to go in that direction, because for a while, I think DoorDash, maybe they realized it or not, they were robbing the restaurants.
So, in thinking, especially, and it's nice that you brought up the point of, some people don't realize that whenever they're looking at the menu for DoorDash, that the price isn't the same as if you went to the store. Now. And they're like, oh, no delivery fee. Well, yeah, you're paying a fee and stuff. But I think that one of the things that I guess that I think about, that I don't necessarily think that a lot of restaurants do, is actually have a website. Anything that actually has their menu. Even if it's a simple website that has their menu and an idea of what their costs are and stuff like that, and especially even with the DoorDash, where you can see, okay, here you can pay this for the convenience, but if you come into my restaurant, then these are the prices that you're going to be paying to help draw that into stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you think that websites are a necessity? Because I see a lot of them that actually all they do is they use like a Facebook group that doesn't necessarily have the information that I would be looking for. I mean, yeah, it's great to see your events that you're doing in the community and stuff like that, but actually learning about your business, I don't think it represents them as well as what a website would do.
Yeah, so I have two things to say, or maybe three things to say to that. Well, one, just for your viewers to know, if you want to see the difference between what DoorDash will charge for your items, will charge for a restaurant's items versus what the restaurant does, if you have the Chipotle app, what's interesting, you can switch from pickup to delivery, right? And I think I learned this months ago. But I would have something on delivery, and I'd have a big order with me and my kids or whatnot, and I'd say, oh, you know what? Like, I don't want to wait 3 hours for them to come deliver. It's Friday night; they're going to be backed up. I'm just going to go pick it up, and then you switch, and then you'll see the price change right there on the screen, and it's literally in half. So you can see it just by using the.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny that there's actually YouTube channels with hacks on how to save money with the restaurants, and DoorDash is the biggest thing that I've seen on there.
Is that right? I didn't even know that.
Like if you actually go to the restaurant, or even the price difference between going to the DoorDash website and going to, say, McDonald's website to order it, even though they use DoorDash, the prices are different.
The prices are different, yeah. And then when it comes to websites for restaurants or any business, but for restaurants, I will not even go to a restaurant that does not have a website. And it's not like I need their website. I mean, I know I could go on Open Table or wherever and probably find, menu picks or whatever, their Facebook page I could find. It doesn't matter. If they don't care enough to create a website for their business, which, let's face it, it's like having a phone number. It's more important than having a phone number.
Absolutely.
Every business needs a freaking website. I mean, you got to be kidding me now. So if they're not doing it, the only reason, and I hope someone can, tell me if there's another reason, but the only reason I see is because they're cheap. So if they're too cheap to set up a $99 website for their business, then how's the food, the service, how's anything going to be from that place? That's insane to me. So yeah, I think that's nuts. I noticed that years ago when I would, if I was traveling and I was going to go look for a restaurant, I'm like, why? I can't find a website, but I can see their Facebook page. And then I'm like, you kidding me? That they're not going to set up when it's so easy and cheap to do, and it doesn't have to have dancing pigs across the front of it. It just has to be a landing. Just show me that you care about your restaurant enough to show me something, and I'll go there. But if you don't, and you're going to use Facebook, which clearly is free, come on. No, that's absurd. It is elementary level. It is the wrong way to think when you own any business, let alone a restaurant. And actually, on my blogs on my website, I wrote a whole blog years ago, but it's still relative today, about why it is so important for restaurants to have a website and what it needs to have on there. And it's not a lot, but it's pretty important stuff, and you'll get a lot from it. So it's crazy not to have one.
Shameless plug, if anybody needs help with a website, email me, Jamie at businessLifelineServices.com. We'll help you with that. So how do I pay myself, or how do I know what I should pay myself as an owner compared to my other expenses? How should I, to be able to keep enough money in the company running properly, especially as a startup, how do I know how much as an owner I should really pay myself?
So you need to have a plan for that. And the plan that I use, it's a cash management system. It's called Profit First. I developed one specifically for restaurants. There's one, you can use it for any single business at all. I highly, highly recommend it. It's very simple to use. And it's super important to do that because a restaurant owner, an owner of any business, should not get paid last. That's absurd. And it actually will cause problems down the road. A lot of problems, probably ones that will end up closing your business. So that's number one. Also, no business in the world can survive without profit. So profit is what a business needs to just survive, because it serves so many different purposes. And not just to reward the owner or give high fives or whatever. Profit is the only way to pay debt of any kind you have in your business. Only way to reward the owner for creating something. The only way to reward staff or have profit sharing, if you want to, bring in partners, whatever it is, a profit serves so many purposes. To build assets, to grow. So number one, and that's why the whole system that I recommend and highly use my clients is called Profit First, and it's based off a book of the same name, which you just put in a system, and the first thing that you take off the top is profit. And that's not to say if you brought in $100, you take $99 in profit. Like nobody's like that model. I would love that model. If it's someone that has a business model that has a 99% profit margin, I'm all in. Yeah. That's not it. It could be $1, it could be 1%, it could be 5%, but it just needs to be taken first, and it needs to be set aside in an account called profit. If it doesn't, if you don't do that, it will not happen. So that's one. The second biggest part of this cash management system is owner's pay. Because if the owner isn't getting paid for the job that they're performing in that business, they will either slowly or fastly begin to resent the business that they just built. Whether they want to fight me on this or not, they will. Why would you want to keep butting your head against a wall and putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something that is not rewarding you in some way or letting you pay your personal bills or whatever? So the very second thing people need to do is make sure they pay themselves. And that is, again, not to repeat myself, but I'm going to go back to your business model. It's what it can afford. So the way I have it, in a perfect world, if your business is running perfectly and it has no crazy things happening, for a restaurant of, let's say, under $500,000 a year restaurant, after you pay your food and beverage vendors about 30% and your labor, not including the owner, so your labor for your staff that runs the place, the 30%, and you're left with that 40% gross profit margin, of that 40%, I think the owner should take about 20% of that. So if there's $40 left over, that owner gets to pay, gets them $8, and then they can profit of about usually 10%, and owner's taxes is the other one. So because now that the owner's going to pay themselves, and now that you just made sure that you have a profitable business, there's going to be a tax event, and you want that. Taxes are a good thing. You want taxes. Yeah. You want them. I'm not saying you want to pay more than you ever should, but if you're not having taxes, you don't have a business.
There's a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So, so for me, like, that's the formula that I use. As the business grows, that percentage will change, but usually, like, after your direct costs are paid, usually the owner will take somewhere between 20 and 50% of, like, the gross profit margin, or also called real revenue.
So we've talked about, especially, again, me being the country boy, I know I repeat myself a lot on that. But especially, I guess, for me, I see a lot of owners go into, have that great idea of opening a restaurant, and ones that I even love, and you kind of hate to see them close. They put in their savings into trying to start something and not really know what they get into. So we've gone over the part of being able to be flexible in ways that you can get people to get your food, whether it's delivery, whether it's that. We've gone over the idea of making sure that you have your percentages right and everything. What other advice would you give to, like I said, a smaller rural type of restaurant compared to a restaurant that has more of a population that their location is easy because they're on a path that people can get into and stuff like that? What is there anything specific to them that you might pass along?
Well, if I were to live in a rural community like that and I wanted to open a restaurant, well, one, it has nothing to do with what I would want, right? It's what's the need of the community. So how would you know what the community is looking for, right? I mean, this is really just like a brainstorming session that you would do either with yourself or even better with a group of friends or family or whoever lives in this community with you, as a fun thing to do. Like, okay, so, we don't have really great, I don't know, what is it? We don't have really great burritos here. Would anyone, do people like burritos? What would they do to go buy a burrito? Would they want it delivered? Would they go pick it up? Would they want to sit in a restaurant? Maybe you have a lot of great pizza, but nobody has a place. Yeah.
We got burgers, chicken, and pizza.
Right? But in a rural community, maybe there's a great place. Maybe you can get pizza takeout all day long, but maybe there's no place to go and actually sit in like a restaurant setting. Maybe they're all just like mom and pop takeout places and you're going to sit at plastic booths. Like maybe we get back to the old Pizza Hut days, right? I grew up on Pizza Hut in Connecticut, right? Where you had the Pac-Man and like, the come in.
Yeah.
But then like, it was like a real restaurant. It was like a red carpet and like the wooden booths. Like, hey, maybe that's
where we always went after Little League games.
That's where we went. I went every Friday night with my neighbor. Like, that's what you did. So it was pizza. You either love pizza or you paid it. But it was like, that was the room. People, they don't want to sit in the room anymore. If you don't want to sit in your house anymore, you've been sitting in there all week long, and you want a place to kind of go that isn't a plastic table with like fluorescent lighting that's beating down on you, but you actually want to feel like you have like a night out, but you just want pizza? Is there a place like that? Like, so this is just brainstorming, like what's missing in the community that your community might embrace? And then you could probably even start a Facebook group of any kind and see if you can get people to kind of comment. I think that would be a great idea. And even rural communities would have like their own type of Facebook group, right? A community group. Maybe you throw a post up there. If I was thinking of opening a restaurant, what would everybody want to see? And then look at the comments, find a common thread in there. And from that common thread, something should pop out. If it doesn't, then maybe you think about doing something else. But if something pops out, then go with it. Take that. All right, where would this be? What would it look like? What could I charge? What could I get these things for? How could I make money? It's just a long, creative brainstorming process.
Oh, yeah. Well, my problem before in my history of wanting to start a business was always I came up with all of these businesses and these plans and stuff, but I never took the step. I'm like, okay, man, I can do this. But then it's actually taking the leap of okay, now it's time to do the action steps.
Yeah.
And,
well, what did you need to take that leap? What'd you need?
My kids growing up, worrying about the
risk.
Having that constant paycheck, to where I can have a little bit more of a risk of taking that time away from them, because they've already took that time. They've already gone out the door. They more or less left Dad alone, and it's the part of, I guess, saying, okay, I've been the dad. Now it's time to actually work on me and do the things that I wanted to do. Yeah. So that's why, and I had to talk with my son about his business. And it's kind of funny that I hadn't really told him the reasons. And he echoed the reason he wanted to start his business now was because he wanted to get it established before he got into the family side of things. So it's almost the same thing as me, except he was smart enough to try to do it and get things going beforehand.
That's very smart.
And to that. So I watched the founder, Ray Kroc.
Oh yeah, love it.
And it's one of the things that you listen to how he kind of struggled whenever he first started going out, and then he ended up having a meeting, and somebody actually taught him, okay, you need to be in the real estate business, not the restaurant business. In that aspect, I know it's difficult for somebody who is just starting out, whether they don't have the capital or something like that. But how important is it to actually own the land and be able to have the building and stuff like that compared to just wanting to start out with a lease?
It's a dream come true, Jamie. So, a dream come true. And then that's why he was such a genius in doing that, because you're almost mitigating any risk if you can own the land. Because if the business fails, you still have the asset of the land. And there's so many great tax implications and money you can make off that. So it's a dream come true. I mean, I don't often get to see that. Where we live in New England, it is extremely expensive. I mean, I was looking at something online the other day, and there was like a 120 square foot shack on Nantucket sold for like $2.5 million. Like, that's how ridiculous real estate is here. So it's almost impossible to own at a reasonable rate land and the restaurant. So it's not something I see very often. I think I only have one client that actually owns the building that they're in, and it's literally night and day compared to the other ones that are like shackled to a landlord who can keep raising their leases every time they come up. But I mean, if it's possible, if I was in an area where I could buy the land, buy the real estate, that wasn't going to, that made sense, that wasn't going to tank me, it is 100% what I would absolutely do. 100%. Yeah.
Now, I live in Portage, Wisconsin, so anybody who lives in Portage, Wisconsin will understand what I'm talking about, unfortunately, whenever I say the statement. But there's some people that own all the potential places to rent, I guess, for a restaurant. In other words, there's some of a monopoly, and they have been known as bad landlords.
Oh, same here. Yep.
What are some pretty important conversations or discussions and contractual type of things that you might want to be considering whenever you have that discussion with the landlord, to kind of protect yourself and know that it's the right situation before you sign on the contract?
Yeah, you need a really good lawyer for that. So no doubt about that. You need a lawyer for that, because I see this all the time. The landlord that I had for one of my restaurants was a nightmare. He was not a good person in general. Oh my God. So I've been, and so I deal with a lot of landlords. With so many of our clients, when we get really involved with their businesses, sometimes we have to, get in there and help consult with the landlord. So I've seen it all. And there are some fair and, dare I say, nice landlords, but literally I'd say it's maybe 1 or 2% of all landlords, maybe. So generally speaking, as bad as it may sound, and giving all landlords a bad rap, it's just a fact, especially when it comes to this commercial land that we would want. So the only way to protect yourself is to have a really good attorney, but also to know what to look for in a lease before you even go to an attorney. Because an attorney may not be an expert in restaurant leases, right? He might not know, but you, the owner or the potential owner, should know how you're locking in your base rent. Is it a gross or a triple net lease? Those are two big deals, and you want to know which one. The triple net, you're going to pay a base, and you're going to pay all the other stuff attributed to running that building. What, snow removal, paving, landscaping, like water, real estate. There's so many things, and then you would want to get copies of the town bills, because if you leave it up to the landlord just to say, oh, this is what I spent on, your water last year, this is what I paid in the overhead liability for this property, you don't know what they're putting in there. So you want to make sure that in the lease that you get copies of all of the relevant bills that you're responsible for paying a portion of, if not all of them. You just want to nail down every single thing in that lease. And then when you go to your really good attorney, and everybody needs an attorney when it comes to this transaction, whether you like them or not, you need one. And you'll say to the attorney, listen, I want to make sure that I am very clear on any expense this landlord might want from me, and what I'm allowed to ask by law to get from them, which is pretty much what I just said.
And it's so funny that you mentioned that. Don't mean to interrupt, but there's been a couple of those that actually that end up closing down that were big in our town, of the part of, okay, there was damages, a small fire, something like that. The air conditioning wasn't right. And then it ends up being a disagreement of what was in that contract of who pays what. He told me this.
That is so common. Actually, I'm dealing with one right now. Well, I mean, we're in the middle of winter, but I mean, last summer, the air conditioner, it was a unit that the landlord installed, I think the year prior, that broke within like 8 months. And so they were trying to run a restaurant, and it was like 110 degrees in July, and they're calling the landlord, and the landlord's like, all right, well, first of all, the landlord wasn't answering the phone for a while. And when he finally did, he's like, all right, well, I've tried calling the company to come back. I don't know what to tell you. But it's like, what? So then it literally, but this is like the game, for lack of a better word, that I think some landlords will play, because they're like, hey, I'm not dining there and I don't work there. Why do I care if they're boiling? It's not my problem. So then it becomes the restaurateur's problem, that they have to go find someone to come out and fix an AC unit that should have been under warranty. I mean, so to your point, all of that needs to be very, very bulleted and hashed out. Before you bring that lease back to the landlord and say, okay, I'll sign the lease if all this is in it. And most landlords are going to, freak out and get nasty and be like, well, I don't need you, whatever. But you have to hold your ground.
Right.
You have to hold your ground. It's like one of the biggest commitments you will have is a lease for a restaurant.
I think that the information that you've given today is like a lot of the things that I thought, but it's one of those things that to hear somebody who's been there, done that has that experience, that if I went to a restaurant now and I kind of say, hey, what is going on? Well, listen to this, listen to this. And here's a good initial, path that you should consider whenever you do that. Yeah. And there's so many other questions that I really want to go through, but especially for more general stuff. But I really wanted this one to concentrate on restaurants and stuff like that. Get a lot of feedback, and I definitely want to have you on. I really enjoyed this.
Wonderful.
And then, of course, there is one pressing question that I really have to ask.
Uh-oh.
Being from New England, that area, should Tom Brady sign a one-day contract with New England again before he retires?
Oh, he absolutely should, but I don't think he will.
You don't think that relationship is there anymore?
No, I don't think he will, and that breaks my heart. You know, back in the day, I had actually been out with Tom Brady right the first year he started, right after Drew Bledsoe got hurt. Awesome guy, very down to earth. I mean, that was 20 years ago now, but he was great. Seen him a few times. I've known the owner of the Patriots as well. He used to come to my restaurant often with his wife, who's now deceased. Great. Everything was great. That was the heyday, but I don't know what happened over these years, and I'm just, I don't think he'll do it, and that just breaks my heart because he was such a big part of New England, everyone around here.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening.
My tie with Boston would end up being is I'm originally from Kentucky. I don't have much of my accent anymore. You might hear it a little bit, but our big thing was when Rick Pitino left the Kentucky Wildcats to go to Boston.
Yep, that's right.
So it was like, we didn't care that it was just like after he failed there and then he went to Louisville. And Louisville's the arch rival. That's the...
I bet it is, yeah.
So, it's funny, the 6 degrees of separation, it's always there. It's funny. So.
I feel like everything leads back to Boston sports somehow.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I definitely appreciate your time. Would love to work with you on some stuff.
Great.
And anybody who hears this, if you have any questions for Kasey, please contact me. We'll relate that, and especially if there's a lot of questions, then next time we get together or something like that, then we'll have a good base of what everybody's wanting to know from that.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate your time, and definitely, I look forward to talking to you again with that, and thanks for being on the show.
All right, Jamie. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, please subscribe. If there's anything that you would like to ask Kasey or something like that, or if you're looking to find a good bookkeeper or something like that, get in contact with me, and I can definitely refer you over to Kasey. And especially if you're in a small town, definitely there's help out there. Make sure that you get the help that you need. If you are struggling, get someone that does know what they're talking about to get that advice to you. Because if it's like me, I definitely want guys like you to survive. I think that, you always hear me talk about communities. It's when it's necessary to have great restaurants like you. If you have a great idea for a restaurant and you just need the idea of being able to, what you need to do to run that successfully, get in contact with me. Email me, jamie.lee@businesslifelineservices.com, or just comment on here. Hopefully you comment, and we'll get to you, and the help is there. So with that, I appreciate your time. Hopefully you come back, subscribe, and we'll talk again. Thanks. Bye.